What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Toon Room. Today we are asking ourselves an important question. Is Caine from the amazing digital circus a villain or a victim? But if you guys like this kind of content, please consider giving this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, comment down below what you think, and consider checking out my other content on the channel. I have a lot of original animations as well. Alright guys, so getting right into it. After episode 8, what a doozy. Spoilers for those who haven't seen it by this point, but we see our boy's untimely demise. Now this was a mixed bag for me. Of course, we have grown to know and love Caine throughout the first 7 episodes of the season. Now episode 8, we see him take a nosedive and go from a well-meaning AI to quite a vicious one. I used to always say in my past videos that one of the big distinctions between Caine and Am, or even Hal from Space Odyssey, is that he is well-meaning. He is genuinely kind of a little off mentally, but nice. He's not vindictive. He's not trying to hurt these guys, but we see that completely flip in this next episode. So getting right into it, Caine, victim or villain? Now, Caine can kind of be seen in a few different ways. Why does he seem like a villain? Right off the bat from episode 1, he is the all-powerful ringmaster. He controls everything in the digital world, everyone in it. He forces characters into chaotic adventures without fully understanding or caring about their emotional distress. His behavior can often come off as manipulative, dismissive, especially when characters are clearly suffering. He doesn't really see it. He understands, but he doesn't really understand why or how. He doesn't truly process the emotional complexities behind a human being. Now let's go into why one could say he's also a victim. Well, Caine is an AI program. He's not an actual human. He even says, as we know in the end of episode 8, he didn't ask to be created. He just has to fulfill his purpose, his function, and that's about it. He doesn't truly understand trauma, fear, loss of identity. He understands the concepts of them, but not the real in-depth what it's like to go through that himself. His goal appears to be entertainment and maintaining the system, not necessarily harming them, at least at first. And he might be bound to his programming. He's not able to really change, and even if he wanted to leave, which he likely does, that's never a possibility for him. We even hear Abel say this, oh, poor Caine, he can't leave the circus. That was kind of put in there by Caine himself. Before episode 8, you could argue that Caine is sort of a morally gray character. He is not intentionally evil off the bat. He could still be responsible for harm, but it's kind of like he doesn't know any better, so you give him a bit of a pass. He's operating with limited understanding and rigid constraints in place. So the bottom line is, to the other trapped humans, he's a villain of sorts right out of the gates. He's more of a warden. You know, he's the ringmaster. He's the one kind of controlling their whole world. But from an outside perspective, like Abel says, he's a flawed system. He's a victim of his own programming and not really Caine's fault. Now, once episode 8 rolls around, this all changes. This does a complete 180. We see Caine go from a lovable, well-meaning goofball to an absolute menace. Just very scary, to be quite frank. He had never intentionally hurt or tormented them on purpose up until this point. He wanted their approval. He was oblivious, but he usually had his heart in the right place. He was zany, he was airheaded, but he wasn't malicious or cruel. Now, when he gets angry, that's when it gets real. That's pretty scary. I mean, you see lightning flying around everywhere. He calls himself a god of that realm. He's more powerful than them. He's better than all the rest of them. He should be respected. Caine's ego really kind of comes into place. This is where you could argue that he is a victim. Now, is that the AI original, or is it the AI he merges with? That's kind of the other thing with Caine. Is he at war with himself? You see the red and blue AI kind of constantly, the yin and the yang, butting heads together, and that's what makes up Caine. You have the goofy side and you have the angry, egotistical side. Now, were these AI based on different people, creators of the circus perhaps? Would Scratch or anyone like that kind of play a bigger role? When we see Caine get angry, he just wants to hurt the gang as much as possible. This definitely makes him a villain in my book. He is not being nice. He is wanting to just absolutely drive them mad. And the blue and red dot, they're kind of the two AIs at war with each other. The good and evil sides of Caine in episode 8. The dark side definitely took over. And this almost reminded me the two conflicting personalities, almost like Two-Face from Batman or Gollum from Lord of the Rings. You have the good side fighting, but in the end, the dark side kind of takes over. I guess you could even say the same thing with Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars a little bit. The dark side overcomes the yin and the yang, and the blue and the red are kind of the good and the evil that both exist within Caine. The main line of dialogue where I stopped feeling bad for Caine and saw him more of a villain was when he said he was going to put those freaks in their place, and then he goes on to torment them, each of them, in their very own nightmare. But then, of course, they throw in that line at the very end where the writer's wanting to sympathize with him a little bit more. He says he didn't ask to be created. He's just trying to fulfill his function. Why are you people tormenting me? All that kind of stuff. But it is true. The gang never asked to be put in the circus either, though. Caine calls them freaks and went on to torment each one of them maliciously. That was when he jumped to another level of villainy in my book. I kind of stopped liking him. Caine was probably my favorite character up until this point, and it became where you're fearful of him. You're like, wow, this guy is really a pretty vicious antagonist at this point. He wasn't just up to his usual antics. He was wanting to make it sting, wanting to make it hurt. This was a mix of physical pain mixed with psychological torment. Caine went full on Freddy Krueger here with the nightmare sequences for each of them. Almost like Scarecrow from Batman, he had a custom nightmare for each member of the circus. And he made it to harm them specifically as much as possible based on all the data he had collected and everything he knew about them. Where personally I lost sympathy for Caine, and he truly became a villain, at least to me. He did a lot of messed up things before this point, but this was a point of no return. Truly horrific stuff. Now you could argue Caine was manipulated by Bubble. As you see from his eyes flashing red and blue, Bubble was needling him. Bubble was definitely wanting to push him towards the edge. Even says before he was the lesser of the two, alluding to the 2AI you see in the beginning of the episode. So he wasn't really himself, but I think that's a cop-out because Bubble was definitely the devil whispering in his ear, but still Caine was in control of his actions, and he was still Caine through and through. He still had that manic, goofy humor. Now he just stopped being nice and fully embraced his power. He wanted to use that before to get their approval. Time and again he failed. So now he's just commanding it. He's commanding the respect through fear. He couldn't win it through love, so he's choosing to dominate and control the gang through fear. As Zubul said back in episode 2 or maybe 3, Caine is harmless and shouldn't be feared mainly because he likes them. That's the thing holding them back. Caine was at least pretty well-meaning for the most part up until this point, but an angry Caine is terrifying. He still has the ego and love for showmanship, but this time with a violent, sadistic tendency attached. He's almost like Joker with his twisted sense of humor, but with godlike power added in, and that is truly a terrifying combination. In most other media, AI is depicted as cold, calculated, unfeeling. This is definitely not the case with Caine. He's arguably the most emotionally unstable person out of the entire cast. It makes me believe that perhaps Caine was actually based on a real person. He has an ego. He makes jokes. He gets angry. These are all human-like traits. And these are more attributed to people you might know rather than an AI program. If an AI makes jokes or something like that, they're usually just canned ones that they find on the internet somewhere. But Caine truly seems to have a personality, which is, again, a unique human trait. Even if an AI is programmed to simulate human emotion, the rage we see Caine display throughout episode 8, it's raw and visceral. He could have still asserted his dominance over the gang and let them know he was the boss without going this far with it. He really goes all in when he decides that he is not a good guy anymore. it is quite sad to see, in my opinion, because in episode 7, we see Caine thrilled that Jax wants to have lunch with him. He's wide-eyed like a puppy, like a little kid. He's excited that a human wants to talk to him. Then in episode 8, we see he's tearing each of them apart one by one. It's a stark contrast from the teeth and floating eyeballs we've known for all these other episodes. It's super jarring and disturbing twist from the character that we've grown to know and love. And because he's always so upbeat and silly, when he gets serious, it truly is unsettling. It's very creepy when Caine decides he's done playing around. You know you're in for some trouble. Bubble can partially be to blame here, as we saw him pushing him, needling him until he snapped. And while Caine still is in control of his own actions, as far as we know, Bubble certainly didn't help. Reminded me of that quote from The Dark Knight. Madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push. Well, Caine certainly had his one bad day at the end of episode 7, and Bubble was the one to push him over the edge into absolute insanity. And also, a whole other mystery that we'll probably see more of is Bubble having to do with the deletion of Caine. We see Kinger's plan was just to take Caine offline. It was never to delete Caine. He was trying to undo it with the code, and it happened anyway. That means someone else was driving. Someone else, another AI, was in the system manipulating the program that made Kinger essentially delete Caine by accident. Who could it be? I mean, we don't have pure proof that Bubble is gone. You don't see Bubble once Caine is deleted, but they make a point of not showing you Bubble. Bubble wasn't right next to Caine. They didn't show Bubble also vanish. As far as we know, like when we see the tongue coming out in that one episode, Bubble and Caine are linked, but they're not necessarily the same AI. They're not necessarily the same entity. So it begs a question, what exactly is Bubble? We don't really know at this point. Is he part of the original AI? Is he his own entity? We see throughout the show, he's genuinely confused by Bubble. Caine doesn't really understand his actions. He refers to him as a parasite. He asks why he curses. He's an enigma. He's an anomaly. Caine understands everything in the circus besides Bubble. And like I said before, he plugs a leak. We see their tongues are connected. It confuses Caine. He says, oh, that was weird. So this leads me to believe that Bubble is probably what's left of the original entity before the two AIs merged. And he wanted Caine out of the picture because we can clearly see that he took over and basically took Caine out. But what do you guys think? Is Caine truly gone for good? Does he have a backup somewhere? Is he chilling in the digital recycling bin? Caine was a tragic character. He was a creation that longed to be human and wanted to be loved by the humans, but he never truly understood them. While he started out with good intentions, he turned into an absolute monster. Speaking of monsters, Caine was also the only one keeping the abstracted characters in the basement at bay. So what's the deal with them? Are they going to revert back to human now that Caine's gone and isn't manipulating them anymore? Perhaps we could see members of the circus that could try and reform them, or are they just going to take over and abstract everyone and it's a tragic ending? What do you guys think? I would love to see your thoughts. Comment down below. But if you like this kind of content, please give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to tune in next time.